Thanks, John. Thanks, Andy. I wrote this out so I would keep within a few-minute time constraint, and they're going to show the video of this afterwards. Transcription is reception, and I've been thinking a lot about reception lately. I operate as a poet, a theorist about poetics, and since 1975, a professor of political science at Fordham University in the Bronx. For all those roles, writing or speaking texts, I'd love to have help in the form of voice recognition software, and would love to talk to folks engineering it, or help as a guinea pig for the new software I'd call TalkText or The Dictator, which I think could drastically change American culture, not to mention making all of these transcription projects a lot easier. Coming to terms with reception has led me to radically reconsider my poetic theorizing, to bring it from a focus on production, like the essays in my book, Paradise and Method, Poetics and Praxis, to focus on the experience of reading. Lately, this has led me first to art theory, especially the 1960s debates over minimalist art, and second, more recently, to classical aesthetics, and especially to Kant's Critique of Judgment. Also, relatedly, it's led me to shift my emphasis in thinking about foreign policy, which is what I teach, from a focus on the explanation of policymaking about Vietnam, for instance. My PhD dissertation thousands of years ago was titled Empire and Society, toward a contextual explanation of American aims and policy in Vietnam, to a focus on reception and the role of the public when it comes to Iraq, for example. And this has a strange affinity with art theory. Before I flesh it all out with regard to experimental poetry, my current project is tentatively called An Aesthetics of National Security Experience by way of Kant's Critique of Judgment. In my teaching, this is why I assigned the book that got me on the Bill O'Reilly show, Robert Scheer's The 5 Biggest Lies George W. Bush Told Us About Iraq. I assign it to frame my little Johnny example. Little Johnny is a teenager, left alone for the weekend, who wrecks the family car. The parents are outraged and demand an explanation of Johnny's choices because they want a prescription for the future. Specific choices are means to an end, which is a means to a deeper end, which is a means to a still deeper end. This charts motivation. If little Johnny fully understood his own motive and didn't fear coming clean, didn't fear a prescription and punishment, he'd confess and explain his choices this way. I am a pathetic loser with intolerably low self-esteem. To compensate, which is my deepest end, the best means is to buff up my status among my peers at school. The means to that is to impress the coolest kids in class. The means to that is to borrow Dad's car and go on a high-speed joyride with them, which is the best way to impress, resulting in a car wreck. But out of fear of punishment and prescription, I can't come clean. I need to come up with another, quote, explanation. So Johnny lies and makes up a generic story so anyone could conclude that he acted out of necessity, that anyone, including Dad, would have made the same choice, and that in the future, Johnny would do the same. What's generic? Survival. Johnny says another car came barreling down on him, and he had to swerve to avoid being killed, so the car spins off the road and is totaled. Not his fault. No blame, no prescription. The Scheer book analyzes the very similar claims made by Bush Cheney about Iraq, that the war was a generic necessity based on Iraq's nuclear threat, its stockpiles of weaponized biological and chemical weapons, its links to terrorism, especially to Al-Qaeda, etc. So if the public, standing in for little Johnny's dad, believes the lies, there's no prescription and no need for a major change in policy. and that's how I got on Bill O'Reilly's radar. Apparently some student, possibly a conservative plant, out to gather dirt on, quote, liberal, quote, profs, took all of my classes and got word to the O'Reilly show that I was corrupting youth with anti-American propaganda. This was fall 2006, 1 week before the '06 congressional elections. The student was scheduled to be on the show by himself for O'Reilly's 5-minute Outrage of the Week segment, complaining about my lack of fair and balanced teaching. The show's producers at Fox News contacted me at 2 o'clock the day of the show to get a comment in response to those accusations. Once they found out I was in Manhattan at home, they asked me if I'd be willing to go on the show to defend myself in person. If so, they'd cancel the student and have O'Reilly get outraged at me directly. I said, sure. They said, okay, limo will pick you up at 4, live taping at 5. I'd never seen the show before, so didn't really know what I was getting in for, and didn't have time to prepare or anticipate anything. I got through the Fox News metal detectors, got some makeup, got to chat with Dick Morris in the green room, and talked for about a minute with O'Reilly before the cameras rolled. Found out he was a year younger than me, that he had a thing about Scheer, a liberal journalist he calls far left, and that, as a conservative Catholic, he was really bent about my teaching anything this critical at a Jesuit university. See what you think. This is my only time on national television. The Fox staff never Googled me, so they never found out I'm better known as a poet, and didn't get to use any of that ammo against me. Afterwards, O'Reilly's producers thought it was, quote, good television because O'Reilly didn't get too visibly enraged and start shouting. Some folks thought I held my own in a very pressurized situation. Others complained that I didn't take the opportunity to out myself as the lifelong leftist that I am, or that I didn't reach out and strangle him. At the very end of the 5-minute segment, he calls me a, quote, stand-up guy, but basically because I was willing to go on the show. Again, because there's no voice recognition software that can generate text from a tape recording, I had some intriguing fun doing the transcription, and am pleased to have it in the journal and to be here tonight.
Back in the book segment tonight, the fact or outrage of the week. You may have heard the name Robert Scheer. He's a radical left-wing newspaper columnist who hates President Bush. Mr. Scheer was fired by the liberal Los Angeles Times last year, some say, because of his far, far left views. Now Mr. Scheer has co-authored a book called The 5 Biggest Lies Bush Told Us About Iraq. Well, the book is now required reading in a class at Fordham University called Analysis of International Politics. Does that sound fair and balanced? With us now, Professor Bruce Andrews, who teaches that class. Look at your reading list here, in addition to the Scheer book. All of these books are pretty far left that you have on a reading curriculum. Would you not agree?
I would disagree.
Okay. Which book is fair and balanced, or presents a pro-capitalist point of view?
A pro-capitalist point of view?
Yes, we live in a capitalist country. Which book on this reading list presents a pro-capitalist point of view?
The first half of this class is about how to explain individual countries' foreign policies. So it doesn't really even deal with the question of capitalism versus non-capitalist systems, or pro-capitalist or not. So it's about explanation, and it's about prescription. Things are going wrong, choices are made that people are unhappy with, and they're interested in a prescription.
Is there any reading list book in your class that is, you could consider pro-American?
Pro-American?
Yes. That means America's good.
This is not the focus of the class.
Okay. Obviously it is.
It's not a normative class. It's not about values.
Let me define.
It's about understanding.
Yeah, understanding your point of view.
No, understanding why the government behaves the way that they do.
In your opinion. One world, ready or not, the manic logic of global capitalism describes modern capitalism as frightening, destabilizing, and running out of control. Scheer's book is a hate Bush diatribe. And you yourself, I think, are a far-left guy. Am I wrong in describing you that way?
That's not relevant to this issue.
Sure it is. You're the instructor of the class. You shape the class.
What's the class about?
The class is about, seems to me, America's bad.
No, the class is about why do countries do what they do, and how do national leaders attempt to avoid having their behavior explained, and how they avoid
The 5 biggest
Sure.
lies
which
Bush
was
told us about
which was
Iraq. Come
a
on.
fabulous item pedagogically in getting students to understand the strategies that governments use to slip out from under,
I wouldn't mind
under a
that.
prescription.
I wouldn't
for
mind
change,
that.
for
If I were in
transformation.
class, I wouldn't mind reading that book, but I'd like to read why another book that balances it out.
Well,
That says that
This book is an analysis of government
By
strategy.
a Bush hater.
No, but the point is, you're presented with the strategy, you're presented with the rhetoric, you can see what it's designed to do. What it's designed to do is to either provide some justificatory discourse around the policy to
But it's all one
increase
way. You're
support.
feeding these kids 35 undergrads, and you do a grads. I don't care about the grads classes. You're feeding these guys a one world view, and you know it's not right. You ought to have
One world, I mean,
Yeah.
like Wendell Willkie?
No, the one world is capitalism is bad, Bush is a liar, America's bad, Scheer is, Scheer
that's
is,
not the
Scheer has
point.
no credibility.
That's not the point of the
Scheer
class.
doesn't have any credibility. Why would you use a book, if you're an academic, and you have been for 31 years,
Mm-hmm.
why would you use a book by a guy who was fired by the LA Times for being irresponsible in his opinions? Why would you use a book like that?
Because I'm not using it as an embodiment of his
It's
opinions.
required reading.
No, but what is it designed to do in the classroom which you don't have any sense of? It's not designed to convince people of a different opinion they might have about the war in
Your
Iraq.
opinion and Scheer's
It's
opinion
designed
are
to
the
help
same.
them think it through.
Your opinion and Scheer's opinion are the same. Here's what
Actually not.
Yeah, here's
What is Scheer's opinion about why the United States is in Iraq?
all right.
You
Here's
know?
what one of your former students said. Dr. Sanders.
That's
The
me,
professor-
excuse me.
I'm sorry.
I'm writing in a complaint about my own class.
You should. The former student said, the question made everyone raise their hand if they had a family member who worked in the CIA, believe the U.S. government assassinated JFK in order to open up Cuba to capitalist exploitation. That's what the.
Well, that's not, I teach another class.
Is that true?
I teach another class on the Kennedy assassination.
And you believe the CIA, the government ordered Kennedy's assassination?
No, I don't.
No.
But I also don't believe Lee Harvey Oswald did it.
All right.
So, it's
I
more
just think-
complicated. It's more complicated.
It is, and I'm not in your
And
class. I want you to
context is crucial.
put one book on here that isn't an anti-American book, and I wouldn't have any problem with it. But we appreciate you being a stand-up guy.
So.
Next, we'll wrap things up. The most ridiculous item is